All right. Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
So today we're looking at something that's kind of interesting.
Yeah?
It's a proposal, actually,
Okay.
that has been sent to some pretty big names.
Okay.
I'm talking Elon Musk level.
Wow. Okay.
And it's all about how to use technology to make the U.S. government more like responsive to its citizens.
Okay.
And it's got this kind of funny name.
All right.
It's called DOGE.
DOGE, like the
Yes, like the meme.
Oh, wow.
It stands for Department of Government Efficiency.
Okay.
And the whole thing really starts with this story about a woman named Maria.
Okay, so what's Maria's story?
So Maria is a single mom, and she's formerly in foster care.
Okay.
And she's just trying to access, job training funds.
Uh-huh.
But she's running into just a mountain of obstacles.
Yeah, Maria's story is a really good example of a problem that affects just millions of people.
Right.
It's a common experience, and it highlights a much bigger issue we have in this country.
And what is that?
Well, the U.S. government spends trillions of dollars on anti-poverty programs.
Right.
Yet millions remain trapped in poverty.
Yeah.
And what's really concerning is that there's no reliable way to tell if these programs are even working.
Yeah, there's no feedback mechanism.
No.
Right? And the proposal uses this analogy
Okay.
of imagine driving a car, but you have no speedometer, no fuel gauge, and blacked out windows.
Oh, wow.
That's basically how the government operates right now.
So no real-time data.
Ah.
No performance measurement.
You'd be driving blind,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
So how does this DOGE proposal suggest that we fix this?
Well, the core idea is something called democracy telemetry.
Okay.
And the key tool that they propose is the Net Promoter Score,
Okay.
or NPS.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a simple concept. You've probably seen it before.
Uh-huh.
A single question.
Okay.
On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this service to a friend?
Yeah, NPS. I see that everywhere.
Yeah.
I usually think about it with companies, though not really government services.
Right.
So how would that work in practice?
Well, you can think of NPS as like a gap detector.
Okay.
It's not about measuring every tiny detail of a government program, but it's about pinpointing the difference between what citizens expect
Right.
and what they actually experience.
Uh-huh.
So imagine Maria going to the workforce center
Okay.
and being asked to rate her experience
Right.
with that simple 0 to 10 question.
Oh, she's probably going to give it a pretty low score with all the issues she's having.
Probably.
Yeah, yeah.
But here's the important part.
Okay.
The system doesn't just record the score. It then asks Maria why.
Okay.
Why did she give that score?
Okay.
So she could explain the challenges she's facing,
Right.
like the missing documents, the lack of childcare, the inflexible training schedule.
Right, so it's capturing all the real-life barriers.
Exactly.
So it's not just collecting data, but it's actually getting to the heart of the problems.
Yeah.
So how do we translate that feedback into actual change, though?
Well, that's where the proposal gets really interesting.
Okay.
It focuses on using existing authorities to make the government more responsive.
Oh,
They call it the 84-word revolution.
wait, 84-word revolution. What's that?
So instead of battling through years of legislative gridlock, they found a way to drive change by making targeted updates to the OMB Circular A11.
I don't even know what that is.
So that's a document that governs how government agencies operate, especially when it comes to budgeting and IT.
So they're kind of hacking the system by tweaking the rules.
Exactly. And those 84 words embed citizen feedback into the core processes of the government.
That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah.
So by changing the rules of the game, they can make agencies more accountable to the people they're supposed to serve.
Right, precisely.
Okay.
Imagine a scenario where an agency consistently receives low NPS scores for a specific program.
Okay.
Under this proposal, that feedback would be directly reflected in their budget and performance evaluations.
Well, so there are real consequences.
Yeah, it creates a strong incentive for agencies to actually prioritize citizen satisfaction.
Yeah, so it's like tying funding to performance, but with the citizen feedback being the key metric.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And the proposal gets even more specific with some innovative features
Right.
that aim to increase transparency and make the government more accessible to everyday citizens.
Okay, give me an example. Like, what kind of features are we talking about?
Well, there's the Democracy Subscribe button,
Okay.
where citizens can subscribe to updates on specific government actions or policies, just like you'd subscribe to your favorite YouTube channel.
Oh?
Imagine being able to follow the progress of a bill or get notified when a new policy impacting your community is being considered.
So it's giving people like a direct line to the information that matters to them.
Exactly.
I like that.
And then there's this intriguing idea called eternal sunshine.
Eternal sunshine. That sounds kind of mysterious.
It is.
No, what is that?
So it's basically a permanent, traceable record of all government actions and decisions. Okay. Think of it as like a government blockchain where everything is logged and can be tracked.
So no more hiding behind layers of bureaucracy.
Right. It's all out in the open.
Wow.
And it also means that any deviation from stated goals would be visible in the data, which makes accountability much easier to enforce.
Yeah, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
It sounds like this would lead to a much more transparent and accountable government.
It has that potential.
Yeah.
And the proposal doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
It also includes the concept of distributed citizen oversight.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does that involve?
So it's about empowering citizens to be active monitors of government performance, not just passive recipients of services.
Yep.
Think of it as crowdsourcing accountability with millions of eyes watching different programs and raising the alarm when something goes wrong.
So like a citizen watchdog network powered by the people.
Exactly.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
But doesn't all of this sound like a massive overhaul of the entire government structure?
Well, actually, that's what's so compelling about this proposal. It specifically focuses on using existing authorities and systems
Okay.
rather than creating something entirely new.
So instead of trying to rewrite the rule book, they're working within the existing framework
Right.
to make it more responsive and accountable to the people it serves.
That's the key insight.
Okay.
And they argue that this approach is not only more feasible, but also more cost-effective.
Well, how much would all this cost to implement?
So the proposal estimates that the annual costs would fall somewhere between $10 million and $100 million.
That's surprisingly affordable,
Yeah.
especially considering the potential impact.
And they even suggest it could lead to a 10x return on investment through improved efficiency.
But isn't the government just too complex to be measured by a single metric like NPS?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
But remember, NPS is being used as a gap detector.
That's
It's about pinpointing the areas where the government is falling short of citizen expectations.
Right.
It's not about capturing every nuance of government operations.
It's about identifying the pressure points
Exactly.
where the system is failing to deliver
Yeah.
and then using that information to drive improvements.
Right. And to take things even further, the proposal introduces this concept of an AI layer to help make sense of all this feedback data.
Okay, here's where it gets futuristic.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this AI layer.
Imagine AI systems that can analyze all the citizen feedback, identify patterns, translate languages, and ultimately help shape more effective programs.
Wow.
It's about using technology to make sense of the vast amounts of data that this feedback system would generate.
So this AI layer could be a real game changer in terms of understanding the needs of citizens
Yes.
and tailoring programs to actually meet those needs.
Yes, it has the potential to be incredibly powerful, and we'll dive into the details of how that could work in our next segment.
Okay, sounds good. So we're talking about using AI to analyze mountains of citizen feedback to improve government services. That's a pretty radical idea, but how would that actually work on like a practical level? Let's go back to Maria's story. She's at the Workforce Center. She's given a low NPS score and explained the reasons why, what happens next.
Imagine this: Maria's feedback, along with feedback from others, is fed into this AI system that can identify patterns and trends. It's not just looking at individual complaints, but looking for these underlying systemic issues.
So the AI is like a detective piecing together clues from all these different experiences.
Exactly. And because it can process information so much faster than humans, it can quickly identify problems that might otherwise go unnoticed. Like, for example, the AI might discover that a large percentage of people who give low scores at the Workforce Center mention difficulties with childcare or transportation.
Okay.
That could then indicate a need for more flexible scheduling or partnerships with local childcare providers.
So the AI is shining a spotlight on these hidden pain points.
Exactly. And that's where the real power of this proposal lies.
Okay.
It's not just about collecting data. It's about using that data to drive meaningful change.
But how do we ensure that this feedback actually leads to action? I mean, we've all filled out surveys that seem to disappear into a black hole. How do we prevent that from happening here?
That's where the proposal's focus on existing authorities comes into play. Remember those 84 words that we talked about?
Yeah.
They're strategically designed to embed citizen feedback into the budget and performance evaluation processes of government agencies.
So it's not just about collecting opinions, it's about tying those opinions to real consequences.
Right. If an agency consistently receives low scores, they're going to feel the heat.
They're going to have to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine a scenario where the workforce center consistently gets low NPS ratings because of childcare issues.
Right.
Under this proposal, that feedback would be factored into their budget allocation for the next fiscal year.
So they might get less money.
They might receive less funding, or they might be required to allocate a certain percentage of their budget to address those specific concerns.
So it creates a powerful incentive for agencies to actually listen to citizens and make improvements.
Right.
But let's be real, government agencies can be pretty resistant to change. How do we overcome that inertia?
That's where the concept of a cascading revolution comes in.
Cascading revolution, okay.
The proposal suggests starting with pilot programs at a few key agencies like the Department of Labor or the Department of Human Services,
So proving the concept on a smaller scale.
right before trying to roll it out across the entire government.
Okay, so kind of like a test drive.
Exactly. And then using the power of federal funding, they can incentivize state and local governments to adopt similar feedback systems.
Uh-huh.
If states want to receive federal dollars for certain programs, they would be required to implement these mechanisms at their level.
So it's like a domino effect. You start at the top and let it trickle down.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about the reliability of the feedback? How do we know that agencies won't try to game the system to get better scores?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And to address that, the proposal recommends using independent third-party organizations to collect and analyze the data.
So you're bringing in some outside experts to keep things honest.
Exactly. These would be firms that specialize in survey methodology and data analysis. They would be responsible for ensuring the integrity of the data and protecting the privacy of citizens.
Okay, so we've got independent verification, and we've got some pretty robust privacy protections.
Yeah.
But even with all that in place, isn't there a risk that this system could be manipulated? What's to stop an agency from just cherry-picking the feedback that makes them look good and ignoring the negative stuff?
That's possible. The proposal anticipates that concern and recommends a few safeguards.
Okay.
First, all the raw data, both positive and negative, would be publicly accessible.
So transparency is key.
Absolutely. And second, the independent firms would be responsible for conducting regular audits to ensure that agencies are not manipulating the data or selectively reporting results.
So it's like checks and balances to prevent abuse.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the potential benefits of this proposal.
Okay.
I think we focused a lot on the mechanics, but what would this actually look like for everyday people? Can we go back to Maria's story and imagine how this system might have made a difference for her?
Yeah, absolutely. Remember how Maria was struggling to access job training funds because of missing documentation and lack of childcare options?
Yeah.
Let's rewind that scenario and imagine it unfolding in a world where this citizen feedback system is in place.
Okay, I'm ready to see how this plays out.
Maria walks into the workforce center,
Right.
and instead of being bombarded with paperwork, she's directed to a kiosk where she can easily provide feedback about her experience.
Okay.
It's a simple interface, maybe even available on her phone, where she can answer the NPS question and explain the challenges she's facing.
At this point, she's probably feeling pretty frustrated, so she's likely to give a pretty low score.
Probably, but that's okay, because the system is designed to capture that frustration and understand why she's unhappy. Maria can describe the issues she's having with the missing documents, the lack of childcare, and the inflexible training schedule.
So it's not just about the number, but the story behind the number.
Exactly. And this feedback, combined with feedback from others facing similar challenges, is what fuels the AI analysis. The system can identify recurring patterns and highlight the areas where the workforce center is failing to meet the needs of its citizens.
It's like the AI is giving a voice to those who are often overlooked or ignored.
And it's not just about identifying problems, it's about finding solutions.
So it's a constant work in progress.
Yeah.
But even if we can overcome all these challenges, how do we measure the success of this system? What does a truly citizen-centric government look like?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's not enough to just collect feedback. We need to see tangible improvements in people's lives. This could include things like shorter wait times for services, more efficient processing of applications, and better outcomes for programs like job training or healthcare.
Right, so it's about moving beyond satisfaction scores and looking at real-world results.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also about measuring things like trust in government and civic engagement. If this system works as intended, we should see an increase in people's willingness to participate in the democratic process and a greater sense of ownership over their government.
So ultimately what they're proposing is a pretty radical departure from the way government operates today.
Yeah, it is.
But if it works, it could fundamentally change the relationship between citizens and their government.
It could, and that's really the goal here, to create a system where the government is truly accountable to the people it serves.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion about a truly innovative proposal, and I want to thank you for taking the time to break it all down for us.
It's been my pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into the world of citizen feedback and government transformation. As always, we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas and to think critically about how we can create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.